What's that song? There's a song like Riverside, motherfucker.
I'm not familiar with that one.
It's the deception within the darkness is that I am not needed. I have nothing to offer, and I'm just existing, and I'm a burden. Like all of those thoughts that we know aren't true, but seem so true in the moment, right?
Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. Question today is, who are we? So what does it mean when we ask that question? Who am I? What do you think, Paul?
Man, starting off strong. It's a big question. I always hate the like when someone says like, "Oh, who are you?" or like, "What do you do?" And it's like there's so many facets of who we are that's tied to what we do, and not like the being and like the deeper layers. And I think it's a question maybe I ask myself too much, like, who am I if not all of the things that I do? And I think, like, as listeners will get to know us, it's like, you know, thinking about men and where men are at and their identity and what defines their sense of identity, and trying to move beyond the sense of doing and career and, you know, what is actually beneath the surface of all of that. And I think that's really fascinating to explore. And I think through much of my 20s, my identity was showing up in like what I was doing for work, you know, the relationships I was seeking, even like travel and adventure. You start tying your identity to I'm this like nomad and I'm this adventurer and explorer and I'm free. But, you know, even the perception of that is misleading, because deep down it's like, well, I still don't know who I am. I'm just attaching myself to all of these things, trying to figure it out. So who am I? It's a deep question, and I don't think there is one answer. It's evolving. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I also think it's really limiting, right? Like when even if we do put a definition, whether it's accurate or not, it's so limiting. And that goes back to the question people always ask is, what do you do? It's just so they can formulate some opinion about you, because it's easier than to, you know, if we form an opinion about someone, it's always easier to move through conversating with them or talking with them, because we form an idea about who they are. And it kind of gives us a point of reference. And I think it's because we're afraid oftentimes to communicate with someone when we feel that we don't quite have an understanding, because it's like maybe they're more intelligent than I am, or maybe they're not a safe person to talk to or something. So we've got to put them in some kind of box. But the other part, I think, on asking that question is like, why do we actually need to know who we are? What difference does it make if we know who we are? If if we have a goal or a mission, that question stops mattering, right? Like if there's an objective and we're in the heat of the moment, or we're in the battle, or we're in the trial or the struggle or whatever it is, if we're locked in, like we're never asking that question of who am I? We're just doing what's needed. And I think it comes from a place of insecurity. Like and it seems simple and obvious, like, well, yeah, if I ask who I am, it's because I have this sense of insecurity. But I think it's deeper than that. It's not just that we feel insecure in who we are, but that we don't feel we have the capability or the capacity to do what's needed in a given situation. So like I think what we're really asking is, do I have what it takes to survive? Do I have what it takes to do what's needed? Do I have what it takes to be part of whatever environment I'm in? What do you think about that?
I mean, it's almost a luxury that we have in our lives to be able to ask the questions like, who am I? You know, when the objective is so clear. You know, for many, it's just survival. And when survival is the only objective, you're not sitting around, you know, waiting for enlightenment to dawn on us and, you know, to be carried up to the heavens, because it's like there's no space for that. It's like there's a very clear objective, and it's just about getting from here to there and making it through to the next day. But with that said, like, you know, with that luxury we have, like, is there any utility in asking ourselves that who am I question? You know, like if we have that objective and we're moving towards that objective, we know that it's not necessarily about reaching the objective, it's who we are and who we become on the way to reaching that objective.
Yeah, right.
And does knowing who we are help us on that journey?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I like how you framed it. And what comes to mind for me is, and it was something we talked about before around integrity, which is you like your integrity is defined by what you do, not who you are. And so there's kind of like the next part of that would be who you are is what you do. So what if whenever we find ourselves asking that question, as it seems inevitably we do, what if instead we used a proxy, which is like, what am I doing? So it's, the thought comes to me, who am I in all of this? And instead of trying to figure that out, we looked at what our goals were. And then we ask ourselves, well, what am I doing on the path to that goal? What am I doing to achieve that? So then it's a reframe that's, I think, more useful in the moment. And even if it doesn't answer the question of who we are, it may give us the tools needed to get through that struggle, get through that situation. And then I would think then that sometimes on the other side of that struggle, the answer to the question has just naturally come, and we're no longer asking it. But so when it does come up, though, that maybe a proxy is, what am I doing, rather than who am I? What do you think what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. A proxy. How do we remain authentic to us? Like, there is no self, right? So how can we be authentic to something that doesn't exist?
Yeah.
Like if we define an objective, and it's like what I guess how I interpreted what you shared was like, who do I need to be in order to achieve that thing? And that's who we decide to become. There's no like waiting around to figure out who I am before we move to the objective. It's like the type of person who gets there is this type of person, therefore I am that. Have I understood that right?
Yeah, take it one step further, which is like not just that type of person, but what does that type of person do in the scenario? So like we can use an archetype, right? Like what, and fill in the blank, but let's just use some form of hero, right? And we aspire, we know that we may not know, quote unquote, who we are, but we know that who we want to be aligns with this archetype. And so then the question in that scenario would be, what would that character do in this situation? What steps would they take? How would they handle, the most micro version of whatever, or most micro aspect of whatever situation we find ourselves? And then, and so then even if the answer we arrive at is one very simple thing, like, okay, well, they carry themselves with grace, or they show strength by giving all of themselves for others, or they show consistency, or it could be anything that aligns with that archetype that we're aspiring toward. But even if it's just one simple thing, I think that can be enough to get us moving. Because we're oftentimes stuck, right? When we're asking ourselves, who am I? Most of the time we're in a stuck place. Otherwise, it's like, who the fuck cares, right?
Yeah, and stuck, but also maybe like to add on to that would be like a little bit lost in the way, or on the way, right? Like we might be still moving forward to that objective, but there's that inner conflict, or there's something that's just not resonating with that goal anymore, potentially. Like,
sure,
I think about that now, like, you've created one identity that's moved you into action, and you're still in action, you're still moving towards the goal, but there's that internal shift.
Yeah.
And whilst, it's not so much stuck, it's just like questioning, is this what I want?
Mm.
And maybe, how do I know that's what I want if I don't know who I am?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think, and to go back to something we've been talking about recently, I think so much of the time we ask what we want, like, what do I want, or what do I want to achieve? And there may not be an answer to that, but if we reframe, or if we just shift the perspective, like it's more than a reframe, but instead of seeking what we want, we just seek to give everything we have to give. And in this context, as a man, give everything we have, be at our best. Then I think the question changes, because our want and our desire is kind of, it's answered, because when we are at our best and we do give to others, then it if it's done genuinely and with integrity, I think oftentimes, if not always, we find what we want there. And I suppose that has to be experienced, and it is a leap, right? Because on one level, inherently, we're wired to seek what makes us feel the best, and sometimes that's what's needed. Is whether it's in the context of, like, we're cold and freezing to death, and we want to feel warm. But yeah, I think when we reframe it about giving rather than receiving or feeling, that it kind of fixes itself. Like the question solves itself, because we stop looking at the question, and then it just kind of solves itself. I don't know. What are your thoughts? What do you think about that?
Well, I was going to ask you, just expanding on that, is like, what would we say to men who don't feel like they have anything to give?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good one. First of all, I think if you're breathing, everyone has something to give. And especially today, when the medium or the modality is like infinite, right? I mean, you can be entirely disabled and you can still reach billions of people by speaking into a microphone, right? And so it's like there's so many modalities to do so many different things, or give in so many different ways. So, not to be generic, but if you're breathing, everyone has something to give. But I think it does start small. But I think you're raising a great question, because it does start within, right? The reason we feel we have nothing to give, on some level, is it's internal, right? We don't feel adequate, or we don't feel whole in some way. Yeah, it's a good question.
I mean, I just think, like, sometimes, for those listening, obviously, very well, but like, having lived with anxiety and depression for a long time, you're kind of waiting for the clouds to part and for the sun to shine again before I'm enough and before I'm worthy of going out and being of use again. Because I guess the deception within the darkness is that I am not needed, I have nothing to offer, and I'm just existing, and I'm a burden. Like, all of those thoughts that we know aren't true, but seem so true in the moment, right?
Yeah.
And whatever it is, like, whatever stage of life we're in, there's different forces, or there's different events that can bring about those clouds. And I'm just like, how do we recognize that we still are valuable despite those feelings? Like, we're still needed. We still do have something to offer the world, even if it's like, let's say we're operating at 5% or 1%. Our 1%, someone still needs.
That's right.
We don't need to be at 100% in order to be of use to someone out there. And it's, and I think you touched on it briefly, but it's like, when we're at 1%, it's like, what is that act of service that we could provide to someone that day.
Mm.
And by
Yeah.
doing that one small act, whatever that looks like, could be messaging someone, it could be, I don't know, like taking the bins out for your neighbor, or like, it's just something.
Yeah.
In doing that, suddenly it moves us from 1% to 3% or 5%. And it's just, it shifts our perspective, that service orientation, that service mindset that reminds us that it's not all about us.
Totally
But when
right.
we're feeling that way, suddenly it feels like everything's about us.
Yeah.
And that's not in like a selfish, like self-centered way. That's the deception of it all.
Yeah.
And
it's
I mean, going even deeper than that, it's like that could be the challenge we're facing now, is the world is like mental health problems in the world, and like identity crises in men and women are skyrocketing, anxiety in women, depression in men, suicide rates, all that kind of stuff. It's like, it's all, potentially a result of becoming identified with self.
Yeah.
And
right.
Service and giving challenges that idea.
That's right. Yeah, that's really well said. It makes me think. So, two points there. I think we often look at this backward, because it's a chicken or the egg thing. We feel like we have no use, or we're useless, because our perception is that we feel useless because we're depressed. But I think it's the converse. We're depressed because we feel useless. And I think that's the core of the issue, is that, the rates particularly for young men, suicide and depression rates are higher than they've ever been, right? We both know this to be true. And I think the issue is the narrative, right? That in a lot of different ways is pushed, that men aren't needed, or masculinity doesn't have a place. And even if we recognize that as inaccurate, it's still such a strong narrative. And when young men, or when men of any age, are hearing that, even in passing, it lands on a deep level. Because I would argue that the greatest expression of our existence as men is to give everything that we have to give. And then if someone tells you that's not needed, that you're not needed, it's like soul crushing. It's crushing on the deepest level. I mean, just the sense of meaning evaporates. And then the question arises, well, who am I if no one needs me? And so, yeah, so where I would go with that is, and going back to the core of the question, which is, what would you say to someone who's in that spot and they feel they're at their 1%? I think it's about shifting the narrative, in conversations like this, to remind men that they are needed. And even if you can't see the people or the entities that need you at the moment, knowing that they are there, knowing that they do exist. And maybe an exercise for that could be something like, imagine at whatever place you are, however low you've gotten, you imagine someone that's, I like to think, imagine a child, right? Someone who's alone, a child that's entirely alone, abandoned. Oftentimes, we think of ourselves this way, depending on our past and potential traumas we've had. But just imagining a child that just has nothing, right? They're hungry. They may be homeless, totally abandoned. And as low as we may feel, like, just imagine giving that child a meal, or giving that child clothes to be warm, or a place to sleep, just something so simple, right? And it's just thinking about that image of something that, regardless of how low we may be, pretty much anyone could do that, right? Like, we could give someone else the shirt we have, or we could pay for someone else to have a meal. And like, that would mean the world to that child or that person. And like, as meaningless as it may seem to us, like, yeah, great, I provided one meal, or I helped someone get warm. It may seem small to us, but to that individual, it would mean the world to them. It's life-changing. And so I think there's different ways that we can we can come back to practices like that, just mental practices, and realize that that's not just hypothetical. There's people like that in every community all around the world who need just the smallest thing. And even if the most that we ever were to give was helping someone in need with a small task, or giving someone a single meal, or whatever that may be, I think it's almost arrogant of us to assume that that has no meaning, when to that person that would be receiving, it means everything. So it's like, and there's a certain level of like, and hear this the right way, but it's like, we've got to get over ourselves and thinking that we're worthless. Like, there's people who need whatever we have to give. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I like just the simple message of get over yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, like just de-identifying with this idea of who we think we are, which probably isn't. It's an idea. It's our best guess based on everything up until now. But this is about more than us. And my follow-up on that, I guess, would be, what I mean, I think about my life, like when I was in one of my worst spots, and I hadn't left the house in months. And I remember telling my mum at the time, this is when I was a teenager, like, I feel like I've tried everything. And yet I hadn't left the house. I'd been staring at the same, servers on Call of Duty for weeks, months.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, is that everything? There's a whole world out there to explore, and people in it to connect with. And sometimes, like, we like, what does it mean to be of service to someone? Like, yes, there's like acts of kindness, but sometimes it's literally just like sharing the journey with someone else, or like walking beside someone on the journey. Like out there in the world, like, you just walk alongside someone, and for a brief moment, you're there and you share a conversation, and that conversation alone could be the spark in that person's life that moves the needle and shifts them towards, something that was really important for them, or shifts them away from something that was detrimental to them. And we just needed to be there with them. But when it is all about us and we feel like we have nothing to give, it's like, just be with people in the experience that we're all sharing. We all have, maybe someone out there, I'd love to meet them, knows what the hell this is all about. But for the most part, we don't know what the hell we're doing here. We're all just like, it's all just our best guess. Just like, perhaps the greatest act of service is just showing up together, like being in it with one another. And that could be it, right? Like, and then when you're with them, then you see the opportunities to help them. Because it's kind of hard if you're like laying on your bedroom floor, or wherever, staring at the ceiling, waiting for inspiration to strike or divine intervention. It's like, it's hard to know how we can be of service. But when you're with that person, you see the opportunities, because we're human and we want to give.
That's well said. And you're right. We evolved. We didn't evolve solo. We evolved with our tribe, with our people. And to your point, even if there's not words to be spoken, just walking alongside is often what's needed. That's really well said.
So what, from your perspective, like, what reminds you day to day that you are needed?
Because it's a practice, I mean, even if we have the intention of giving, it's still a practice. Every day, coming back to that. I'll probably struggle to define it or put it into words, but it is a really clear shift when we just ask the question, what can I give? It's like so simple, but like we get up, we do, we get about our day, and then so often we're unconsciously just directly into our work or into a project or into whatever psychological narratives or stories or ideas, thoughts, etc. that we have going on. Maybe it's as simple as just asking the question, what one thing could I give to someone today? And it doesn't replace anything we do. It doesn't have to replace the rest of what we do. It's just one small thing. And then again, it's a practice. So then each day it continues to build on build that tool or build that muscle. And then just little bit by little bit, eventually our whole mindset changes. And then what I've noticed is, and it seems so paradoxical or counterintuitive rather, but like we feel oftentimes that if we try to give, then we're going to lose focus and we can't do what we might have done. Like we say we're working on a project or an entrepreneur or a business owner, and we're like, yeah, if I take time to pause what I'm doing and give to someone else, then my project's going to suffer, what I'm doing is going to suffer. But what I've found oftentimes, just by asking that one question and taking the time for one small act, I end up being exponentially more productive because the whole paradigm shifts, right? The whole perspective and energy level shifts. And when I come back to my work, I just like have this fresh energy and this drive because it goes back to the feeling needed. Nothing feels better to me than feeling needed. Like the energy boost that comes out of nowhere is incredible. But to get back to your question, I think it might just be that one small thing, just asking what I can give to someone else today. It's a great place to start. And then it may be the only place to start. And then it just, what unfolds from there, just evolves into, it's like if you roll a snowball, it just starts little, but then it can't help but keep rolling if the hill's steep enough, I guess. But yeah. What do you think? What would you do?
Yeah. What can I give? What can I give to this person today? I mean, I think we underestimate just how valuable our presence is, but also just like space. Sometimes people just need a safe space. Ultimately, that's what we needed as kids. Like, a lot of the
totally
like traumas and whatnot, or attachment disorders, or dysregulated behaviors came from just our desire for a safe space to be, like a space that we could go back to when we've been on our adventure and it was really overwhelming, and we just need to like get the strength up again and then go back out into the world and fight the next battle. And I think well, I reflect now, like I'm in a new relationship, let's just label it, maybe she'll listen to this, but like from my perspective, she'd been fighting the battle on her own, and what she needed was just a space to just be like, I can just relax with this person, I can just be, I don't need to fight everything on my own. So in terms of like what can I give, like maybe it's that like problem solver, like I need to solve the problem, I need to do the thing, I need to be of service, I need to do all these things. It's like, well, what if it was just what I'm giving today is just a space for people to breathe, a space for people to relax, a space for my partner, a space for my teammates, colleagues, like whoever it is in our lives, friends. It's like, I don't need to necessarily be stressing about, well, today I just don't know what I can give.
Yeah, sure.
But the person you are is enough to just hold people.
Yeah.
And that in itself is valuable. It might seem like we're not doing anything, we're just sitting next to that person in silence. Yeah. But that is what you had to give, and that is what they needed to receive.
Yeah. The message under that is so powerful. It's like, quit asking. The message could be interpreted as quit asking if you're enough and just show up. Like you already are enough, and whoever might need you to just show up. By asking, by vacillating in the question of who am I, they end up suffering because you don't show up, and all you have to do is show up, and that's enough. Yeah, it's
Well,
such
it's
a
interesting
great
you
point.
say that, because that stands out as a lesson in my time as a youth worker.
Yeah,
Like kids who've never had those safe spaces or trusted adults, their narrative is that adults will betray them, let them down, leave them, and won't keep showing up. And even on the days when I was like so exhausted, you're coming off sleepover shifts, you're coming off, some really hectic days, plus you've got a life, plus you've, got all these other things happening.
yeah,
All they needed is just an adult to keep showing up regardless of anything, because that breaks their cycle. That changes their script, so they can start on a new trajectory, a healthier trajectory, a more rewarding trajectory for their life. And that, like completely underscored and embedded that idea that sometimes it's literally just about consistency and continuing to show up for those people. And that in itself over time flips the script. And there's other opportunities within that, but I think as men, it's like just be present, like just show up. That's enough. The world needs your presence. The world needs who you are without needing to overthink it and try and articulate it. It's like what do they say? It's like some things can't be explained, only experienced. It's like you need to spend less time trying to figure out how to explain it and just go out there and live it.
Yeah, very well stated. Yeah, there's so much to be said for that.
So what would be your final thoughts, I guess, just on what men can take away from this conversation around identity, and where they can, or I guess what you've touched on a few things, but like I guess having heard a lot of what we've spoken about, like what can they do to maybe feel a little bit more secure in themselves and to feel more needed?
Yeah, just to kind of summarize a couple of points. I think I would say if you're asking who I am, maybe the shift is what can I give, and then who I am follows naturally. And then if you don't know what to give, you just show up, right? And then by showing up, it becomes so clear what's needed. That's to me, that's what stands out the most. And just the idea that just always knowing, if it's hard when we're in a place we feel isolated, but if you happen to listen to this, just hearing someone else say, no matter who you are, no matter what place you're in, you're needed. The world needs you. People need you. So just show up. What about you?
What to finish on? Yeah, no, show up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything that I'd add to that. I mean, I resonate that in the way of having not felt worthy and having hidden away and isolated myself, and it's and over time learning of just the power of showing up, and not getting caught in the questions, but in just taking the actions, and the questions answer themselves. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. All right, man. If you're watching this, you've stuck along this long, stuck with the video this long. Thanks, and we will see you guys very soon on the next one. And until then, show up. See you soon.
Ciao for now. Riverside, motherfucker.